Here we have Qwak, which is a single-screen platformer by Jamie Woodhouse. He's the guy who did Nitro, which I've also reviewed on the Amiga, and I really liked that one, so let's see how this one holds up. So inside this adorably sized box, we have the manual, which is in a few different languages, and this cool catalog. I'm going to have to check out that F-17 challenge, because you know I like my old school racing games, and there's some stuff in the catalog that I hadn't actually heard of, like Assassin and Apache. And here we have the completely overrated Project X. And I love this ad copy on the back of the box, which goes as far as to claim that Qwak is the most playable Amiga game ever. Well, let's find out and boot this guy up. I really do like this box a lot. It makes me want to get more of those Team 17 budget games. And look how small it is compared to an average Amiga game box. Yeah, it's really cute. And it feels well made. I love the cover illustration, the fact that the title of the game is vertical. But let's boot up my Amiga 2000 and see how the game really plays. Because that's the most important thing, right? Not the box, even though that's cool as a collector. The game boots up with nice colorful graphics and some great music by RodLand, also known as Dr. Awesome. So here's how you play Qwak. You have to get all the keys, which then opens the door. You can get all kinds of fruit, which also gives you more ammo once you complete the level. The game also has quite a few power-ups you can get in the form of potions. I really like the chocolate egg idea. It's a powered up egg, but once you hit an enemy with it, you have to catch it again to retain that power-up. There's also the skulls, flowers, and mushrooms, and believe it or not, those three items are related. And so let's start the game and see what it's all about. So like I said before, the goal is to grab all the keys and hit the exit. And you'll see I'm wearing a suit of armor now because I got the armor potion. And you don't have to kill all the enemies, you just have to open the gate and get out. After each level, the fruit that you collect turns into eggs, which you use as ammo. Each level may have a hint, and that's not a hint at how to beat the level, it's actually a random event that changes how the level behaves. So I wish I had brought my Brawly. This event gives you a shorter time limit before things start raining down on you. And they start innocent enough, you start getting fruit, but then spikes start being mixed in, and eventually it's just raining spikes. There's other events too, like my favorite one is Chase HQ, and what that is the last key you need to get grows wings and starts flying around the level, and you have to go and catch it. There's Baddies Get Revenge, which makes the enemies respawn once before finally being vanquished. These can often spice up a level, but they can sometimes unbalance the game. Here's an example. On some levels, if you get the Baddies Get Revenge event, the level becomes much harder than it was originally. So I kind of wish what they had done was have one or two special events chosen for these specific levels, and you know, maybe those come into play, maybe they don't. The other issue I have with the game's balance is the limited ammo, and that's not a problem by itself, but if you run out, you can get into a situation where the level is really hard to complete. Now, you can carry eggs between levels, but let's say you start a level with, say, 30 eggs, and you fire 5 of them, then kick the bucket. On the next life, you only have 25 eggs to work with, and so on. So you can get into a really bad situation that way, especially if you're retrying the same level over and over. The good news is that if you're not going crazy running and gunning, and you take the time to collect all the fruit on the level, you probably won't get into that situation so easily. I don't know if you caught that, but if you get the mushroom, the flowers turn into skulls and vice versa, so there's a bit of planning on some of these levels if you want to collect everything. And collecting everything is easier said than done because the enemies are kept in by the very items you're collecting. So if you just charge in there and let all the enemies out, you'll have them bouncing all over the place, and you'll make the level much harder than it otherwise would have been. So there's some very smart design in Qwak. On top of that, if you don't kill any of the enemies, it gives you a pacifist bonus. Qwak also has a great 2-player mode with special features not found in the single-player game. Let me read from the manual. For a 2-player game, special features include races, scenes where your eggs stun the other player, scenes where you must work together to be peaceful, etc. These special features bring out the best in good-natured rivalry, so be nice to each other. Good advice. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, wow, this game looks faster than I remember, well, I'm running it in NTSC mode, so that's 60 Hz, not the usual 50. Actually, 50 Hz seems too slow to me now. And the reason I show it in NTSC is I wanted to show people games that run on an NTSC Amiga like you'd find in North America without any modifications or hacks or anything like that. Because a lot of wisdom I find online is, well, if you don't have a PAL Amiga, a 50 Hz Amiga, then don't bother. Well, I find that to not really be true. Now, there definitely are some issues when you run Qwak in NTSC mode. For example, there's a little black bar at the top of the screen, and the screen is shifted downward a little bit. So if you have a TV that has a lot of masking, you might not be able to see the bottom of the screen, and that's crucial for Qwak. This didn't work so great on my main TV in my living room, but worked fine on my Sony PVM. On Commodore monitors, I think you can just shift the image up or down, so I think you'll be okay there. In 60 Hz mode, there's also some minor slowdown, only in 2-player mode. So it's not a big deal, but it doesn't run quite as well as it does on a PAL 50 Hz Amiga. One other thing I want to touch on is that I've heard people say online, well, it's not a really great show-off piece of programming for the Amiga, but, I don't really find that to be the case. I mean, what I see is a game that moves at this flawless 50 frames a second. The behaviors of all the objects and everything are really finely tuned. It all feels really nice. There's all kinds of little touches here and there, like the numbers that pop up and bounce when you collect items, and when the fruit and spikes are raining down on you, they actually kind of bounce a little bit when they hit platforms. The devil's in the details, and Qwak really got that stuff nailed. And just looking at the amount of movement on the screen at any given time, and that great snow effect, I think the Super Nintendo might have a lot of trouble pulling this game off. And I have to say that a finely tuned game like Qwak really impresses me a lot more than a game like, say, Shadow of the Beast, which has all kinds of graphical effects, but is kind of stiff when it comes to enemy behaviors and movement and stuff like that. And what's this? It's Qwak running on the Mac. Yeah, there are modern versions of Qwak by the original author, Jamie Woodhouse. So if you don't have an Amiga and don't want to emulate, this is a really good option. There's versions for the Mac, PC, iOS, and I think Android. Admittedly, it's really hard to play Qwak on a mobile device because it's so frantic and the controls have to be so precise. And speaking of that, one perk of this version on the desktop is that you can use a button to jump. On the Amiga one, it's a one-button game like most Amiga games. It would have been really nice if they had supported the Genesis pad like Factor 5 games like Turrican do, but sadly, Qwak on the Amiga makes you press up to jump. And I found the best joystick for that was the Suncom Slick Stick, because it has a nice hexagonal gate on the stick. But this version of Qwak on the desktop has all new levels. The art style has also been touched up. It's more high resolution, And there are a lot of alpha effects, which I kind of don't like as much as the old school Amiga animation style, where, you know, for example, you'd go through the exit gate in the Amiga one, and you'd hop through lemming style. In this one, you kind of fade out and rotate. It's a little bit odd. But they did keep the original music and sound effects intact, which are brilliant. I may have to do a full review of this version of Qwak at some point, but you know the Amiga one wasn't the original version either. It was originally for the 8-bit BBC Micro. Yeah, imagine that. There's also a Game Boy Advance version, and I was bidding on that one on eBay for a little bit, not realizing how rare and expensive it was. I think it ended up going for over 100 British pounds, so quite rare and expensive. Anyway, if you like this style of game, you know, games like Bubble Bobble or Rainbow Islands or Parasol Stars, check out Qwak. I'm not sure it's up to the absolute brilliance of Parasol Stars, and it does take a lot of concepts from the aforementioned games, but it also gives them a run for their money, in my opinion. I'd actually rather play this than, say, RodLand. It's that good. It's a game with lots of levels, lots of replayability, and you have to think to beat it. And there's that 2-player mode, which is great. Yes, Qwak is definitely not whack, even on the Mac.